From the CISO Series, it's Cybersecurity Headlines.
Secure by Design leaders leave CISA, LLMs up the ante for exploiting vulnerabilities, and Microsoft and FBI post industry status reports. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines, and now we're looking forward to some insight, some opinion, and expertise from one of our favorite returning guests, making her third appearance on this show, CISO Emeritus of Note, Bethany De Lude. Thank you so much for being here, Bethany. I got to ask before we jump into the news, how was your week in cybersecurity?
I have to say, this was one of those incredibly energizing weeks. It was, if I were to pick a word or a theme, it was connection. I got to participate in a couple CISO roundtables, which was always such a great source of learning. Got to connect dots across all the headline stories that we read today. And so it just has been a very positive, energizing week. And to all the CISOs out there listening who had a week that was not so positive and energizing, I've sat exactly where you sit, and I am rooting for you, your company, and all those affected by a week that did not go as intended.
And I'm just going to say, spoiler, we have some positive news here, including your three, I don't know how to point on a video. You have 3 stars here, Bethany, for being a 3-time guest. So energy and an award, all in one. You can't ask for anything more. We also can't ask anything more from our sponsor for this week, Dropzone AI. You can meet them at RSA. Just head on over to booth ESE60 and tell them the CISO Series sent you. Remember, you can join us on YouTube Live. Do so. Go to CISOseries.com, hit the events, drop down to look for the cybersecurity headlines week in review image. If you click on it, I guarantee you'll be brought to some sort of portal in which you can watch this show. We got David Cross in there. We got CCL. We got Kevin Farrell coming in. He was doing double duty. He was on Super Cyber Friday as well. So thank you for all of your time and joining us. We've got about 20 minutes, though, speaking of time. So let's jump into the news. First up here, Secure by Design leaders leave CISA. 2 of the chief architects of CISA's Secure by Design initiatives have announced that they're leaving the agency. Senior Technical Advisor Bob Lord and Senior Advisor Lauren Zabarick are departing. They joined CISA in 2022 and 2023, respectively. Acting CISA Director Bridget Bean said the agency will continue to urge companies to develop products that are secure by design. Now, it's sad to see such talent leave, but given the position CISA finds itself in, saying that it's trying to redefine its mission here, it is not too much of a surprise. I'm curious, Bethany, how do you feel this will impact companies' own motivations to continue with the Secure by Design initiative and just kind of that principle in general?
Yeah, it's a bit disheartening. It was a great initiative that was introduced. I think it placed accountability in the right spot. And it also, for those who signed on to the principles, related to the initiative, it gave timelines associated for when they were going to act in accordance with these principles. So this is a troubling bellwether that this, if what we're talking about is leadership leaving, instead of talking about what is the next great action being taken to promote this initiative, then it tells folks that they can take their foot off the pedal. And that's not a good thing. And something that I did when I was thinking about this segment is I went back and refreshed my memory on what those design principles are. And when you look at that for the CISOs on this call, it's puzzling that anyone wouldn't sign up. Using MFA, getting rid of default credentials, eradicating classes of flaws like cross-site scripting and SQL injection. It's just very table stakes type of things. So I don't know why that's polarizing, and that it seems to be deprecated as a priority.
Yeah, that's, I guess, deprecated as a priority does not sound great, given, though, that we have seen CISA's messaging being very specific, right, about what CISA is no longer going to be doing, right? They really are backing away from all of the election interference stuff and that kind of stuff. Like, so the fact that they have said, we're not interested in this at all, to me is at least, okay, that's still on the table for CISA, even if the fact that you have some of the primary architects of it leaving signals, hey, maybe they aren't going to be they didn't feel they were going to be as engaged or as meaningful or as impactful in that, going long term. Sean Kelly, I guess we'll need to go back to the bad old days of secure it after the fact. Yeah, Sean. Maybe don't be baking in those credentials, folks. I'm just gonna go ahead and say we can maybe all agree on that. Next up here, today's LLMs craft exploits from patches at lightning speed. Large language models like OpenAI's GPT-4 and Anthropic's Claude Sonnet 3.7 are accelerating the process of creating working exploits after a vulnerability disclosure. A researcher at ProDefense demonstrated that AI could analyze code patches, identify security flaws, and generate proof of concept attack scripts quickly, reducing a defender's response time. Experts warn this rapid automation is also shrinking reaction windows for cybersecurity teams. Bethany, given everything we've seen from LLM news, no surprise here, but given the permanent state of cat and mouse in this business, how can organizations use the same technology to fight the LLM enhanced exploits? They can move faster. How are we using this to move faster in response?
I think something that it's a mindset change. So folks are used to tackling vulnerabilities, responding to CVEs, in the same manner. So just as the bad actors have embraced LLMs, embraced creating custom GPTs, that's something that for security teams to get room, invest in training them so that they can use the same technology to perhaps create custom GPTs to summarize different product exploits, to create step-by-step instructions on patching, to create executive summaries, to do those tasks related to fixing vulnerabilities that can accelerate patch velocity and accelerate prioritization of which patches to deploy and focus upon. So I think it's getting folks to run at this new technology the same way the bad actors are running at this technology, and to purchase products where someone else has ran at it, and now you don't need to know the nuts and bolts, but you can leverage that same acceleration.
All right, next up here, one of the many reports that we're going to be covering in the rest of the show, Microsoft's latest security progress report. As part of the investigation of Microsoft's 2023 Exchange Online breach, the Cyber Safety Review Board concluded that the intrusion of China-linked threat actor Storm 0558 was preventable and listed a bunch of ways Microsoft dropped the ball. As a result, Microsoft launched its Secure Future Initiative, or SFI, and it's now published its second progress report. This now shows that Microsoft has implemented things like phishing-resistant MFA, now covering 92% of employee accounts. It also has 99% of production assets are now inventoried, and token validation has shifted to hardened SDKs, as well as over 6 million inactive tenants having been removed. The report does state, however, that the CSRB recommendations about transparency and victim notification process refinements remain largely incomplete, or Microsoft is waiting on industry consultation, that kind of stuff. Bethany, you chose this as one of the stories to talk about this week. What stands out to you in this report?
Well, part of the reason I selected this story is because it allowed me to quote Spider-Man. Which is with great power comes great responsibility. And this is something, Microsoft is so, it's just part of the fabric, folks, whether you're home users, corporate users, domestically, globally, Microsoft is just woven into the fabric of professional and personal lives. And I think with that type of market penetration, there is a duty to provide a product that is in fact secure by design. I'm going right back to that first article. I'm just going to weave that in, at every potential juncture. And so on the one hand, it gave me, I guess, I liked the fact that the Cyber Safety Review Board and bringing the Microsoft president, of the company before Congress, things like that, did spark a reprioritization within Microsoft, to put security, more in the forefront. And when you reading like the first, this report, there are just so many, I guess, notable changes and accomplishments, from adding a new deputy CISO. We all know that having, accountability for cybersecurity is key. And I do want to acknowledge that, yes, Voltaire did say that quote before it was attributed to, Uncle Ben. but I think Spider-Man didn't have it penetrate our psyches, more so.
Well, and Stan Lee couldn't
great
rip
call
off, I
out.
think, therefore I am. Yeah. So
that
that
is
worked out.
that is absolutely true. But so those things, so I like that. Then and I like some of the things that Microsoft has done. Like they had their Zero-Day Quest, inaugural event last year. But now let's, like those are the things that you're looking at in front of you. All the at a Microsoft, yay, well done. But then behind that, you think, wow, there was a lot of stuff to clean up. and that's where we move from a thumbs up to maybe a little bit of a head scratcher. In the Zero-Day Quest, for example, there were 180 vulnerabilities identified. That's fantastic. It's great that they sponsored an event. It's great that they monetized finding those vulnerabilities. At the same time, products were going live with 180 vulnerabilities. So you just, it's a constant, like I said, cat and mouse game. So lots to applaud here, and also, some things that give one a little pause.
I do find it very interesting that Microsoft released seemingly a very transparent progress report that did admit that their transparency goals are the things that they have done. Is that just a matter of prioritization for that kind of customer response and transparency, right? Like the technical controls are the first priority. Once we have all those down, should we read anything more into that?
I think it's, again, just about prioritization. When you went through the number of things that they agreed to do and where they were in that list, they still have a lot more to do. I think it was maybe 5 initiatives they felt that they were pretty well fortified on. So it's like anything. You pick the things that you think are the most important and work down your list. So I'm not reading too much into that just yet. We'll see what their next report says.
And we have a link to that in our show notes, so make sure you check out the full report. It is available, no paywall or anything like that, or sign up wall or anything like that. So be sure to check it out because there is a lot of really good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our next story, I have to spend a few moments and thank our sponsor for today, DropZone AI. Alert investigation is eating up your security team's day. 30 to 40 minutes per alert adds up fast. DropZone AI's SOC analyst transforms this reality by investigating every alert with expert-level thoroughness at machine speed. Their AI SOC analyst gathers evidence, connects the dots across your security tools, and delivers clear reports with recommended actions, all in minutes. No playbooks to build, no code to write. Just consistent, high-quality investigations that free your team to focus on what matters, stopping actual threats. Meet them at RSA. Head on over to booth ESE60 and tell them the CISO Series sent you. All right, next up here, FBI issues its 2024 ICE report. So we got another report coming out here, this one from the good old Federal Bureau of Investigation. Their 25th installment of its annual Internet Crime Complaint Center, or IC3 report, the agency revealed a new high for reported losses last year, reaching, I'm going to say, an astounding $16.6 billion, with over 850,000 complaints, up 33% from 2023. Cyber-enabled fraud accounted for a staggering $13.7 billion of those losses and accounted for 40% of ICC's complaint volume. People over the age of 60 suffered the most significant financial losses, coming in at over $4.8 billion, and that's a 43% increase from 2023. To end, I guess on a little bit of a positive note here, the FBI said last year, cyber fraud-related arrests increased 700% to 215 through 11 joint operations with local law enforcement agencies. Lots of numbers there. A lot of them don't sound great. Bethany, what stands out to you in this?
Yeah, so a couple things. So the vulnerable population. So thinking about that, folks, over 60, and they were, I think average loss was like $100,000, which is pretty significant. I see this report as a call to action, which in this way. So it made me think about when in a previous CISO role, I had done like your typical security awareness type, outreach to the workforce.
Mhm.
Only I really personalized it. And I talked about one of these scams. It was an emergency scam that someone had tried against my mom. And when you looked at they got their information from my father's obituary. So that was a very, I guess generates emotion when people read notes like that. And she knew to call me, and despite being upset, did not become victimized by a crime. And so
Mm.
I put out in that communication, a call to that company's workforce to say, you have access to a world-class security awareness program. The people in your circle don't. So, and in your ecosystem. So take these learnings and help your mom, and it was a way to really engage the workforce. It wasn't just the CISO, telling everyone one more thing they can't do. It was a CISO empowering every person to do something helpful for their ecosystem in both their personal and their professional lives. So when I read this report and I looked at the scams, I do want to point out, Rich, they're still using pig butchering. Page 14, and I had to scratch. Like, I thought we agreed we weren't going to call it that anymore, but.
I just feel sorry for the pigs at this. They're getting the pig butchers themselves are getting a bad name. I feel like butcher shops are thinking people are scamming them. I'm not a fan. We can call it romance. There's a more simple name. Let's just call it a romance scam. I don't understand this.
Yeah, they were combining confidence and romance scams. They were like, quote, pig butchering. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be, quote, pig butchering.
You
So
can just
I think the report was no surprises. Just again, as we say in my family, got my Irish up on the folks who are victimizing so many vulnerable populations.
Well, and as CCL points out, kind of echoing everything you said, Bethany, we need more community support and awareness. And yeah, that kind of that ability to know that you can have a positive impact, right? You see reports like this, it's very easy to be like, this is hopeless. Everything's getting worse all the time. That you have, this community has expertise that we can give to our networks, and to provide a personal context, right? To not make it nameless numbers, to be like, this happened to my mom, this happened to my, this happened to someone in my family, and provide supportive ways to kind of deal with that. I think is really the way to go with that. So yeah, I really appreciate that, Bethany.
Sure thing. Yeah, we do have some agency. That's a good feeling.
I mean, this is kind of we're backdooring into a philosophy. We had Voltaire. Now we have agency. All right. So if I don't know if we talk about the phenomenology, I guess we'll really complete the cycle here. All right. So next up here, let's see if we can finish into this one. British companies told to hold in-person interviews to thwart North Korea job scammers. After finding it too difficult to pursue the job finding scam in the US, North Korean operatives are now focusing on Europe and specifically the UK to seek out remote work with the goal of accessing sensitive data, as well as cash, which is always a classic. They are often assisted by co-conspirators who hold physical addresses in the country. John Hultquist, the chief analyst at Google's threat intelligence group, told the UK news outlet The Guardian many of the remedies are in the hands of the HR department, which usually has very little expertise dealing with a covert state adversary. Hultquist added that companies need to do a better job checking physical identities and ensuring that the person you're talking to is who they claim to be. This scheme usually breaks down when the actor is asked to go on camera or come into an office for an interview. Bethany, we don't often bring HR into our show here, but what should companies do to delegate this responsibility to HR department? As Hultquist suggests here, is this HR and cybersecurity needing to move more in lockstep?
It is. There's so many times like we think that something that has been very well publicized, that CISOs are very locked into and aware of, it hasn't necessarily reached your HR department.
Mm-hmm.
So with these scams, and it's interesting, as I mentioned earlier, I participate in many different roundtables, and this was a topic that a year ago was thought to be theoretical, even though there were joint advisories issued on this topic, and I think dating back to 2022. And then more recently in discussions, people had war stories of different kinds of devices being connected and facilitating this. And And when you unpacked those conversations, sometimes it turned out that there was breakdowns in HR processes or onboarding processes. So I think it's important to not assume that someone in your organization has that same level of awareness that you do. That your head of HR read I thought no before. I still applaud them for being so, we used the word transparent earlier, transparent about their North Korean IT worker, and and putting that out there when that happened. And so I think it is about engaging them and showing them just how good the mechanisms are um, to pretend to be a legitimate worker. So yes, I think it's just, this is one more group to engage, and HR folks already have been um, folks to partner with from a cyber perspective. Someone goes to change their bank deposit.
Yeah.
You don't just process that. You have to have steps in place. So I think it's just a natural extension of a conversation that's already happening.
Yeah, and if and if this is news, right? Like you were saying, if I think CISOs can suffer from being the extremely online, whatever the cybersecurity version of that is, right? Where we're all tuned into this. Where you're listening to cybersecurity headlines, good job. But that may not reach down to the rest of your org. And I would even say it up to John Holquist. I mean, obviously, he's kind of an expert. Like I'm not trying to school him, but we're seeing more and more deepfakes making it so, hey, showing up on video, yeah, if you ask them for the spur of the moment, maybe they can't do that. But that is increasingly, not becoming the barrier, or like, the litmus test that it might have been just a couple of years ago, or just maybe a year ago or something like that. So that's another thing to, maybe keep the HR department appraised of as well,
Yes.
for sure. All right, our last story here today, kind of a double story here. We got more reports. Edge technologies and third-party vendors as threats. So these reports came out. First up, the old Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, the DBIR, always a classic. It attributes an increase in breaches involving third parties, in which organizations such as accountants and law firms are used as ways to reach their intended targets. Then, a report from Mandiant shows that devices like VPNs, firewalls, and routers lack third-party security support, making organizations vulnerable. Bethany, here we have two groups of people and tools, respectively, that operate on the edge of a target organization, yet are direct targets for exploitation. Because hey, let's move laterally. It's what all the crazy kids are doing. Neither of these are new. Why are these still newsworthy in this report for CISOs?
Because they still haven't been solved. That's so they will, and the data is showing us that our third parties and our partner ecosystem is a increasing attack vector. That's how folks are getting in. I mean, we go back to well, now it feels like a million years ago, so maybe half a million years ago, when Target was attacked through its HVAC vendor. Like, that was a wake up call, and then yet this persists. So I think what is interesting this week is, three major reports. We had, the FBI report, we had M-Trends, we have DBIR, and then we have the what we started with the Secure by Design initiative. And yet the data from these very credible reports is telling us that exploiting vulnerabilities is the new preferred tactic for getting a foothold. So I think we're hearing about this because if you're creating products that aren't secure, that's our corporate perimeter is wherever we log into something or wherever our data is stored. So, and chances are you don't have the same visibility and control with folks outside of your direct, I guess, chain of command, for lack of a better word. So we need to find better ways to strengthen that ecosystem so that we can perhaps see this number decline.
Yeah, and when it comes to the DBIR, I always increasingly am sympathetic to, like, you as a security practitioner, you can't go, don't hire lawyers or accountants, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a great way to lose every single time, right? Because like and that's where the threat actors know that they have, like, you need to engage with these services, that your tooling and your visibility into them even if they're having audits and stuff like that done, your visibility of those is never going to be as perfect as it is even in your own organization, which we know is already problematic. So like in terms of that creativity and finding those weak points of knowing like business still needs to get done, so security,
Yeah.
it's the joke of if we just didn't have to do business, it would be so much easier to secure
Yeah.
everything, right?
And so many third parties, whether it's service provider or a product, a SaaS, they're sticky.
Yeah.
Once you are they're part of your business model, it's tough to pivot. So another challenge is finding out what are the levers to incentivize security as a like a metric for product design, product quality, because once once you have this relationship, they do tend to be pretty sticky. And as much as like certain regulations, folks who are working their way through DORA know that you need to identify your critical vendors, and that you need to have an exit strategy. And easier said than done.
Yes, most definitely. Big thank you to all of our audience that came in today, was just having some fun in the chat. Kevin Farrell, I hope you said trying to install a ceiling fan, so you missed some of the show. That means that was not successful. So I'm wishing you success on ceiling fan installation. I suggest you go back and listen to the rest of the show because we had a fantastic conversation, although I think we kind of put a button on it at the very end there. But CCL, we had Sean Kelly, one of our producers from Cybersecurity Headlines in there, David Cross, the big boss man, David Spark, of course, and some P. Domingo was also in there giving us that Voltaire rep. So thank you for that so much there. So thanks to everybody that gets in there, helps make the show better. Before we get out of here, Bethany, was there any story that was a thumbs up or an eye roller for you today?
The combination of the stories that promoted the 3 major reports that were released this week, those definite thumbs up, and probably an eye, not a roller, but a rubber, because as I read them all this week, it was a lot of eye strain, this week. But I love how those stories and the story on the secure by design, just questioning what what the future is there, the connections among them, because again, like I mentioned, the data is showing we have to have better products and services that are more secure, with our third parties, and better security with our third party ecosystem. And I did appreciate that Mandy in M-Trends, they called out that in one of the top exploited vulnerabilities was based on a SQL injection, and and then you look at the secure by design, when the principles is stop using design patterns that are known to be exploitable. So
or the most known one, yes.
Yeah. So just as hopefully when people see this data, that they will be incentivized to do better.
I'm going to give my own thumbs up for the release of the Verizon DBIR, because I always use that as my metric for when I'm going to need bifocals, because I always like to read the snarky footnotes. And I made it another year, folks. So we're getting there. We're doing good. Thank you, Verizon Footnotes. I appreciate that. Bethany, thank you so much for being on the show. We will have to have you on again as soon as possible. Where can people find you online if they are so inclined?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there, and on another CISO Series program.
Yes,
I have 3 stars for this one, but I've got 6 total. So I'm going for a record.
And next month, you're going to be doing an AMA that we're organizing over on the cybersecurity subreddit. So make sure you look for that. Thank you once again, Bethany De Lude, CISO Emeritus. I'm going to say CISO Emeritus of note. And thank you so much for your time and your expertise. This has been a blast.
It's been my pleasure. Everyone have a good weekend.
And thanks also to our sponsor for today, Dropzone AI. Remember to meet them at RSA. That's booth ESE60. And speaking of RSA, the CISO Series has a ton of fun events going on around the show. We'll be recording a live CISO Series podcast at B-Sides SF on April 27th, hosting an RSA happy hour at Lucky Strike San Francisco on the 28th, and very excited. The big boss man, David Spark, is doing his San Francisco walking tour on May 1st. I know you're saying, Rich, that's a lot of information. How am I going to remember that all? You fools. Just go to CISOseries.com, look for our events page. All that information is there. You don't have to remember it. We keep an index. That's what the internet is for. Thanks to everyone in our audience today. I know we can't always get every single comment up on the screen, but it is a delight to see them each and every week, and it's a delight hanging out with all of you, helping make the show better. Please join us again next week. We're going to have another episode of our Week in Review that starts at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. We're taking Super Cyber Friday off for RSA, but to register to join us, head on over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or just go to the events page, CISOseries.com. In the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix every single day. Give us about 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. It's called Cyber Security Headlines, and make sure you subscribe and tell a friend. Until the next time we meet, for myself, for Bethany, for our producer extraordinaire, Steve Prentice, for the big boss man, David Spark, and all of us here on the CISO Series family, here's wishing you and yours to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.